In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. Today is the fourth Sunday of the first month of the Coptic year, fourth Sunday of the month of Tut, which is the first Sunday of the Coptic year. And last time, if you recall, we were talking about this verse when someone came to Christ and asked him, "What do I do to gain the kingdom of heaven?" Christ told him to read the scriptures, and he told him, "I've been reading the scriptures since I was young." But Christ asked him a more important question. He asked him, "What is your reading of it?" And with that question, we started talking about how do we read the Bible. And there were 4 points. We discussed 2 points last sermon, and today, God willing, we'll continue. So the first 2 points that we discussed: when we read the Bible, we read it with the spirit of obedience. And when we read it with the spirit of obedience, we will see wonders. We will read the Bible with a sense of wonder. And then we read the Bible with the spirit of the church. We don't understand the Bible outside the church. We understand the Bible in the church. It doesn't mean I only read the Bible in the church. No. I read the Bible anywhere, but I understand it through the church, how the church understood the Bible. And we agreed last time that if you think who collected the Bible and put it together, it was the church. The church fathers, they read the books, they decided which is canonical, which is not canonical, which is can be accepted, which cannot be accepted, and which books can be only accepted as a historical background, but not for sound doctrine. Today we will discuss the last 2 points about how do we read the Bible. When we read the Bible with the Christ as the heart of the Bible. Christ is the heart of the Bible. Why do we read the Bible? Because in each page we meet Christ. In each page we meet Christ. Our reading is Christ reading or Christ-centered reading. Like when we read the Bible, Christ is the center of our reading to the Bible. As St. Paul said in the epistle to Colossians 1, verse 17, he said, "In him all things hold. In him all things hold." Christ is a unifying thread throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Without the character and the person of Christ in the Bible, you cannot really put the pieces together. He is a unifying thread, Old Testament and the New Testament. And we as Orthodox, we prefer the analytical we prefer the synthetic rather than the analytical reading or hermeneutic sermons. What does this mean? When we look at the Bible, we don't like to analyze everything and then just look at separate events, and understand them without looking at the big picture. So we like to put the puzzles together and look the bigger picture instead of diving in very, very, very deep and miss the whole picture. Analytical study of the Bible is important, don't get me wrong, but we prefer to get the message. What is the major message behind this? What do I understand when I keep studying 1 Kings, Masalan, or 1 Samuel, and I see David fleeing from the face of Saul, the king, and all these wars and everything? It's good to know them as facts that happen in history. But the Bible is not a history book, okay? There is more to that. So that's why the synthetic reading of the Bible, when we collect all the puzzles together, then we will look to a more clearer picture. So the synthetic, rather than the analytical hermeneutics, that seeing the Bible as a whole integrated unit. Without we have this in mind, if we don't have Christ-centered reading, we will not get the full depth of the Bible. We will look at it as just different scattered events that happened in the past, and we will not be able to connect really to the message, the real message behind these events, why it was written. And this point will be more clear when we continue at the point after this. We interpret the Bible and the Old Testament in the light of the New Testament, and the New Testament in the light of the Old Testament. It's one unit. They are separated, yes. They're distinguished before Christ and Christ and after, but it's always the best way to interpret the Bible is by using the Bible itself. And when you look at the characters in the Bible, we try to use a typology method, which is the typology method is that we look at certain characters in the Bible, in the history, and we see, does this character guide us to Christ? Does it resemble Christ? Does it represent Christ in any way? And then and the characters doesn't have to be just people. It can be anything in the Bible. I'll give you a few examples about this typology method. Like the Melchizedek priest that offered an offering consists of wine and bread, very similar to what we do now. It's almost impossible not to see Christ in Melchizedek the priest. The King David, king that unified the Israelites together and finally had like the first kingdom of Israel unified and lived in peace for 40 years, let's say for about 30 years. Also, we can look at the rock that flowed with water to the Israelites in the wilderness of Sinai to give them water, as Christ is the source of our life in this dry world that we live in. So this eye of looking for Christ in everything, we need to have it in mind because we need to always be connected to Christ while reading the Bible. Another example of this typology method is Job and Joseph. They had to go through a lot of sufferings while they were innocent. Ring the bell? Someone suffered while he was innocent. And through their sufferings, they were redeemed. The last point on how to read the Bible is we need to read the Bible as a personal message to everyone. This message is for me. Okay? One of the early saints says this, which is an eye-opening. He says, "He who is humble in his thoughts and is engaged in spiritual work, when he reads the Bible, will apply everything he reads to himself and not to his neighbor." Okay? I'll say it again. He who is humbled in his thoughts and who is engaged in spiritual work, when he reads the Bible, he will apply everything he reads to himself and not his neighbor, right? So that's a very important point. If you read stories in the Bible and you can't really relate this story to someone else, you didn't have that personal message yet. You didn't have it yet. We apply everything to ourselves. We'll give you examples. And also, instead of asking what does this verse mean, we ask what does this verse mean for me or to me, not just what does it mean. What does it mean for me? Because the Bible is considered or is a dialogue between the Lord and myself. It's a two-way conversation between both of us. So everything that I read in the Bible is a personal message that's directed to me. Like, I'll give you an example. When we read about in the book of Genesis and the first sin, Adam fall, when Adam committed the sin, do we look at Adam as a sin, as Adam committed the sin, and we always feel why Adam? Why did you do this? You should not have done this. Or do we really look at it and then ask ourselves, how many times do I fall like Adam? Big difference. When you question the past, you feel frustrated because you cannot change it. But when you apply the past to your life, you're able to correct and fix. When you're able to criticize yourself, you'll be able to fix yourself. 3 more points we have to keep in mind when we read the Bible. 3 points. The Bible is a sacred history. The Bible is a sacred history book. It's not ideology, it's not philosophy, it's our sacred faith. So it's not that I bring the Bible and I'll try to convince someone with it. I don't need to. I just give them the Bible and ask them to read it. Convincing someone to read the Bible, it's like convincing someone that food is important for his life. It's up to you. You want to read, you can. You cannot. You don't want to read, that's up to you. I cannot, like the philosophy and poets and all these category of literature is different than the Bible. I can tell you that this book is amazing. It's great, and it's when you read it, it has a lot of good and valuable things to read. You can say about this about the ideology, but when it comes to the Bible, this is our sacred history. This is our Bible, and this is what St. Paul says or said to the people in Athens. He told them, I didn't come to preach Christ among you guys as a philosopher or someone who had a great ideology. No, I came to preach Christ among you as someone who did not receive any kind of education. I came to the Jews to preach Christ as not as a priest, not as even a Levi, or not as someone who's so righteous about the offerings and everything. No, I came to preach with Christ as a righteous man who followed the law in every way, but he cared more about the human being more than the rules and the law of Moses. And this is a fact that we sometimes miss in the difficulty of the world around us. We try to convince people so hard with the Bible, forgetting that this is the work of the Holy Spirit. You want to convince anyone with the Bible, let him see this in your actions, not in your words. Words are easy. Words are easy. Anyone can say a lot of things, but actions are difficult, especially actions in the time where it really matters. So first thing, Bible is a sacred history book. It's not philosophy, it's not ideology, it's our historical faith. Also, when you read the Bible, try to observe the particularity and the specificity of the Bible and how Christ did certain things. God is very particular about his work with us. He does not do anything haphazard. He doesn't do things randomly. He is very particular. He does certain things in certain ways for a very specific reason. We call him the Pantocrator, or the one that adjusts everything in his hand. So when you read the Bible, keep that sense of particularity in your mind. The third point is that particular history that we read and that we believe in, that we need to apply in our lives. I'll give you an example. Today in the gospel that we read about that woman who came to Christ with a fragrant oil and bore the oil on his feet, right? And then tried to wipe his feet and with her hair, and it was a mess. When we read this and when we hear this, do we hear it as just an example of great love and great humility and someone who didn't even dare to say a word and she said everything with her tears? Or do we take it to even a much deeper level where I look at that lady and compare myself to her? Do I have that much generous love as she did? By the way, this fragrant oil she had was very pricey, was very expensive. Like I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 months worth of salary, masalan. So it was really expensive. She brought this, was very generous, and she used it on Christ. That's her way of saying, I really love you, Christ. I love you, Lord. Am I that generous in my love? Another thing, do I share that spontaneous and impulsive love, or do I really care for how people look at me and think of me if I do certain things? Everyone is different, but there are people and there are examples that we all need to learn from. She had this impulsive love that she didn't care about anyone. She just went, she did this, and she didn't care how people think of her. She went among Pharisees and high-class people, and she knows that they know she is a sinner, and she did not care. Just walking into that room was a great, courageous move of her side. She did it. She didn't hesitate. She did it. And here, an important question that we need to ask ourselves. Do I have that spontaneous love, or am I timid to make any commitment, either to good or bad? Because sometimes this is our problem. Those who are honest with themselves, they don't want to make commitment. I cannot commit to attend a liturgy a week. I cannot commit to read the Bible daily. I cannot commit to pray twice a day. Why cannot you commit? Because I don't want to commit and then don't follow. Okay? Well, at least he's honest. But the problem is, they're honest, but they're timid. They're afraid of commitment because they cannot commit. They're afraid of commitment because they don't want to commit. But here is the thing. Commitment is a sign of love. When you commit to something, that means you really, your heart into this. So when we commit to something, I really care for it. If we don't commit to the liturgy or to the prayer or to reading the Bible, then it doesn't really come as a priority, right? So if we look at this lady today, she was not afraid of anything. She walked into the room. Her impulsive love drove her inside, and she didn't care anything that can happen. She just wanted to see Christ, and I think she didn't see anyone else. She only saw the person of Christ. And this is important in our relationship with Him. When you are in a busy crowd, like this crowd, don't worry about who's here and who's not here. Don't worry who's sitting next to you and who's not. What about the only person that matters? You come here for Him, so make it count. You came here today for Christ, so keep your eyes on Him and only on Christ. Another saying that I'd like to quote for everyone, it says here, we shall not fully profit from the Bible unless we are in love with Christ. We shall not fully profit of the Bible or reading the Bible unless we are in love with Christ. And just to sum it up, the first point on how to read the Bible was with the spirit of obedience. And then the second, as we understand the Bible through the church and in the church. And the third was that it has to be a Christ-centered reading. And the last point, the Bible is always a personal message. When we do this, we will experience wonders in our life. And we will experience the power of the Word. And I'd like to end it with this. Your word, with this verse, your word is a lamp for my feet and a light to my path. Your word is a light. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. And I ask you as someone who really cares for your own salvation. It's almost impossible to get to heaven without commitment to reading the Bible. It's very difficult. Read the Bible. It will explain to us as a light for my foot. It will explain to us if I'm doing something wrong. It will like light certain things in our minds. Oh, I haven't been doing this or this and this and that. So we'll start to do these things. And when you do these things, you will be able to identify which path you're going on. and you will be able to identify how much Christ have love for us. To Him is glory forever and ever. Amen.